afternoon, everybody. Uh, First, let me introduce myself. I'm Dr. Suhas Vhanmane from Indian Register of Shipping, and I'm with IRS since last 20 years in Research and Route Development Department. So today's our focus of this talk is basically the future shipping in the view of uh, technology and decarbonization. So I will just give some class perspective in my talk in a very brief manner, and I would like to have some questions from you after my talk. So just before going to the topic, I will just touch upon the what is EXI and CII. So EXI is, as per the definition, is the energy efficiency of existing ships, and CI is the carbon intensity index. EXI is a design measure which ship has to comply once in its lifetime. But CII is basically the operational measure, and ship has to comply with the requirements for its future operations. So as per the CII, the ship has to reduce its carbon emissions by 11% compared to what it was emitting in 2019. So this 11% reduction for a ship, doesn't matter what the ship type or the age is or the size is, for all ships above 5,000 GT and above has to comply with this. And this seems to be very challenging for the shipping industry. EXI, as this is a design index, there are some design measure, there are some options for the ship. Either you install energy saving devices, because of which there will be some gain in speed power relationship, or the ship can install engine power limitation. Just simply reduce the rated power so that it will not go beyond certain limit. This is how it can be set up. But since CII is the operational measure, the requirements to satisfy this are coming from all operations of the ships. See, at the end, our aim is to reduce the CO2 emissions by 40% by 2030 and 70% by 2050. How we can do this? There are only two options. Either consume less, or or use such a fuel which has less carbon content. Now, how this is going to be achieved? Okay, so as earlier presented also we have seen, there could be like alternative fuels or some technology which will help us to achieve this. But now here, before adopting any new technology or an alternative fuel, that needs to go through some systematic procedure before adoption by the industry. How to do that one? Then what we are doing at our class, we are studying all these requirements, all these solutions, for the shipping industry, may it be alternative fuels or the technology. We are coming up with the rules, requirements, the guidelines for the adoption or the use by the industry. And as far as for the technology part, we are also in tie-up with Smart Ship Hub for the digitalization of shipping operations, for the IoT system, wherein all operational data of the ships will come to the cloud and analytics will be performed, the reports of which will be beneficial to the ship owners to decide further actions. In brief, it is like a data-driven decision-making system, right? But when we actually come to the adoption of any technology, including the alternative fuels, each these of aspects needs to go through the technology readiness assessment. Basically, any technology or any new thing starts with the concept on paper, some initial calculations, that we call it as a TRL level 1, and it reaches to the TRL level 9, which is basically the commercialization of the technology. Okay, so these 1 to 9 levels are divided into research, development, and deployment. So when all this cannot happen in one day, it requires time in each of these phases. And here the IRS comes into picture for assessment of any technology, including the technical alternative fuels. Okay, and towards this we are in working with the industry also, we have worked with the shipping company for the use of blended biofuels. B20 blend has been used at that time. We are working with Cochin Shipyard also for battery operated ships, particularly the fuel cell, and we are going to approve the fuel cells also and the ships also when they built out. We are working with Kochi Metro Rail Limited for the battery operated, the ferries, and there are some other projects lined up for this. So at the end, our observation is this, that to achieve the target set by IMO and our National Action Plan, the complete ecosystem needs to be developed. It's not one stakeholder's job. A complete ecosystem needs to be developed. Either it's like class society, ship owners, the engine manufacturers, even the maintainability and support segment. Everybody has to come on board before adopting any new technology or alternative fuels. So with this, this is my just summary, and I'm just closing my talk. I will be happy to take some questions if you people have. Thank you.
My question is to Iris. You were talking about the alternate fuel. So I just want to know whether the synthetic fuel is also part of that, and if there you see any requirement coming in India for the synthetic fuel, because as Mr. Kulkarni also said, when we talk about the hydrogen as a fuel or fully electrification, this is something which will take some time. But in between, we are looking at the alternate fuel. So where does the synthetic fuel is falling in terms of the Indian requirement? Yeah.
Thank you. Actually, right now, as per our study and the surveys conducted, the short-term focus will be on LNG, LPG, and methane. And synthetic fuels is little bit actually on the medium to long-term horizon. So, as per the request and our interactions with the industry, we are actually going ahead with this immediate requirements, like short-term requirements so far. But apart from synthetic fuels, we are actually working on other technology requirements such as carbon capture and storage. Okay, so we are working on that to develop our rules or guidelines for CO2 carrier ships, and as well as for CCS and utilization systems.
Yeah. So why I was saying about synthetic fuel, because when we talk about the hydrogen, methane, we are talking about the different category of the diesel engine. But for the existing fleet which is there, synthetic fuel, which we generally call as e-diesel, you will require a minimum modification in the existing fleet, which means the existing fleet as well with the minimum modification, maybe like in fuel system, can also use synthetic fuel, and it is said like synthetic fuel can reduce the emission by maybe 50 to 70% kind of emission reduction can happen. So going with the existing fleet, synthetic fuel is also one of the options which can be considered.
Yeah, studies, whatever ongoing studies are there, they indicate the similar line actually. Synthetic fuels may be promising. But as I said actually earlier, so the adoption will not happen immediately, and the adoption needs to go through some systematic process what we have and governed by IMO regulations, requirements, and for class societies, acts is also there. So it will take time actually before we go to the other fields. What I actually have not deliberately touched upon during my talk is basically the risk assessment, the safety assessment. For when we actually change any system on board, may it be existing ships or the planned changes for the new build, the changes needs to look in from the safety assessment, the risk assessment. Now this particularly for the existing ships, the risk is not only to the ship, the risk is to the asset as well as the human, and we need to actually go the new changes need to look from this angle before we go for adoption. Thank you.
Thank you.
So my question is, you mentioned methane as a fuel. My question is related to biomethanization plants. in the context of waste management, yeah, there's a huge push from the central government with Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. And wet waste is typically used to generate biomethane. So where the ports are concerned, how developed are we for the infrastructure and what is the penetration level? And what are the classification rules and regulations? Do they need to come to you to get certified so that they can go ahead and install those plants and commission it for use? Even the hospitality industry has a huge scope for that. Yeah, thank you.
Right, sir. Actually, methanol is another promising fuel. But as we all know, shipping industry, ships are basically emitting CO2 less than 2%. And there are other industries which are the highly polluting industries. And the policies are actually looking from other industries right now. Okay, like fertilizer industry, cement industry, their demand for decarbonization, their strategic planning is much more, ahead than our industry, because we are actually governed by IMO requirements. When they come, they become like, statutory requirements. Then our industry is looking, from compliance point of only. But as you said, is rightly, there are some options like agricultural crops and food waste are options. But the other industries are actually looking to grab that as early as possible, and I think we are little bit slow in that line of adoption. But efforts are required, and as I said, the complete ecosystem, like who will collect the waste, who will collect the waste oil from. So when we talk about this compliance of new regulation, there is like opportunity for somebody else, some like new startups, new services, who will get into these activities, who will move around the city to collect the waste oil and send it to the plant. Yes, but I think we again have to wait for that. Saying this, we should not wait for that also, because our target in 2050 is 70% reduction in CO2 emissions. We are in 2022. When we build ship today, its age is basically, design age is 25 years, but operational age is 30 years. So already our ships which are going to build now and coming into operation by next year, they have to comply with that vision. But I think we are little bit slow, but needs to be taken up faster as possible as required.
Thank you so much, sir, for addressing the audience. I think there is a technical glitch because of which Mr. Jaitesh Chandraji is from Cochin Shipyard Limited. We couldn't play it virtually, his session. However, if something can be sorted, definitely I will look up to it. Before I conclude and before I ask you to take a break, I would like Mr. Sachin Kulkarni to felicitate the panelists in the very first place. So in the very first place, we would like it if you could felicitate Dr. Suhas and Mr. Prasad Sawant. Also, Dr. Suhas, I request you to please felicitate our sir, Mr. Sachin Kulkarni. And the technical glitch just got solved while felicitating. Sir is live and he would like to go ahead and address my entire team here. Thank